Hey guys, it's James Ballard from wildwings.co.uk, and today we're going to be looking at how to prop hang. So, as with all my video tutorials, I'm going to start by demonstrating with the app on the stick how to enter the manoeuvre, the sort of things we want to be doing while we're in the manoeuvre, and then how to exit the manoeuvre. And then I'm going to pick up my transmitter and go over key stick movements with you, and if you've got your transmitter on you, we can do those together. Then I'm going to show you some slow motion, high definition footage of me performing the manoeuvre in real life with my Extremefly Yak 88. Okay, so let's go straight into what we're expecting with the prop hang. There's a couple of different ways in which you can enter the prop hang. Some people like to enter from a harrier and then whip the back end out. But actually I think as a whole manoeuvre you want to really be coming in from flat level flying, and so that's what I'm going to concentrate on with this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is we come into wind and we're going to come in nice and slowly. So you're going to do a setup circuit, and once you've done your setup circuit, you're going to come in nice and slowly into wind. Now you want to start off doing this manoeuvre really high up. In the end, it's probably best you do it much lower down because you can see what's happening with the plane much more clearly. If it's up in the sky, you might not see it falling, you can't correct, and it will fall out easier than if it's lower down. But if it's lower down and you're learning how to prop hang, then the results could be disastrous. So two key tips here. One is practice on the simulator, and there's loads of good simulators out there. There's Real Flight and Phoenix, and get in touch with Wild Wings and they'll recommend a simulator for you. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is buy a Shockey. It's a foam plane, they're not that expensive, and you can crash them time and time and time again, and then just tape them up or glue them back together, and they're ready to fly again. Okay, so practice with that first if you're going to do low down to the ground stuff. So let's go back to this. So we're level flying, we've got low power, maybe idle, maybe quarter power, and then we're going to bring the back end down with up elevator. So bring the tail down with up elevator, and at this point we're going to want to add in quite a lot of power. So up elevator is enough to bring it to here, and now you want to add in lots of power to carry the back round to this point. Now, as you add in power, probably about 3/4 power, don't be surprised if the plane starts to climb. So it gets to this point. Now this is normal, and actually you just need to take a bit of time to practice how much power to put on to get it just enough power to bring the back end down, but not make the plane rise too much. So then you're in this position. Now this is good, this is the original prop hang position, so if I bring it like this so you can see it, you're in this position here. So from this position, there's a couple of things we need to focus on. One is your power, okay, and the other is all the surfaces. So let's first of all talk about power. If you keep the same power on all the time, then the plane will start to fall, unless you've got too much power, in which case it will start to climb. But what it won't do is stay where it is. So you actually need to burst the throttle, burst the power, just gently, up and down, to keep it, and it will go up and down slightly, but that will keep it nicely on the spot. Too much bursting the throttle will do this sort of thing. You just want enough to keep it there, but you can't just keep the power in one place, I'm afraid. So the second thing to look at is surfaces. Now what it's going to want to do once you're in this position is it's going to want to spin clockwise because of the torque of the motor or the engine. So in order to counteract this, we need to put on right aileron, and I advise you to put on full right aileron. So up elevator to here, lots of power to here. Now reduce the power slightly because we don't want to be climbing. You want just about half power, and full right aileron, and so this will keep the plane steady like that, okay? So what will happen now is you are going to need to correct the position of the plane. If it starts to go out like that, you need to use the rudder to bring it back, and if it starts to go out like that, you need the elevator, and you need to use lots of little movements, always little movements on the stick, but you constantly need to be making those adjustments. If you're waiting to make an adjustment, then I'm afraid you're being too slow and you will fall out. So you need to be constantly on those adjustments. But there is sometimes when you are so bang on the spot, on the axis, that actually it's very, very easy to keep it there, and you only need to do a few movements every now and again. But until you've got to that spot, you need to be constantly on those movements, making sure it's in the middle. So you've got your right aileron on full so that you're not rotating. And now, with the position of the surfaces, okay, you need quite a lot of airflow to get them to work. So while you're correcting all these different errors, so when it goes off axis, you correct it, but in order for it to correct it properly, you need a lot of airflow going over the surface. So to do this, you also burst the throttle, you burst the power. This gives a quick burst of air that goes over the surface and brings it back. So every time you make a correction, you want to be sort of bursting the throttle, or you can just carry on doing it at a constant motion, in which case you should have enough airflow over the corrections to keep on going. So you do need to be aware that you do have to burst the throttle to get enough air over the surfaces to make these corrections. If the plane does start to rotate to anti-clockwise, because you've got the right aileron on, then you can take the right aileron off for a minute. Well, not a minute, a couple of seconds actually. And then what it will do is it will stop, and then it will start to rotate clockwise again. So at this point you can take, so what you do, it starts to rotate anti-clockwise. You then take your right aileron off for a couple of seconds and then put it straight back on again. And then it will stop rotating and it will go back to being in front of you. So the reason why we do this manoeuvre into wind is because if there's any wind, if there's lots of wind, it's going to be very difficult, because as soon as you've got the prop hang going in its axis, it will fly backwards and probably start to rotate as well. You might not be able to stop it. If there's not much wind, you should be okay. So you're looking for a little amount of wind, not too much, and you should just have enough to bring it into the prop hang, full right aileron, burst that throttle, get those corrections going, and you're fine. So now let's have a look at the stick movements with the transmitter. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come in after your setup circuit on low power. So let's say quarter power, and then you're going to bring the up elevator on. So the up elevator brings the back down. Once it's about 45 degrees, increase the throttle to about 3/4 power, and that will whip the background still. You can then let go of the elevator and also then bring the power down to about half. So now you're in the prop hang position. Once you're there, full right aileron goes on, and then you're looking for little movements on the rudder and little movements on the elevator to keep it, on the axis, to keep it from falling. And you're going to want to be bursting the throttle. So there's a lot going on there, and you need to decide how much to burst the throttle as well. Too much and you're going to be bouncing up and down like a yo-yo, but too little, you won't have enough air going over the surfaces in order to rotate it. So get practicing on the simulator, and also get yourself a shocky so you can practice low to the ground with a very cheap plane. Alright, so now let's have a look at some slow motion footage, and I'm going to take you through exactly what's happening in the footage so you can see what the surfaces are doing and what I'm doing. So the approach to this manoeuvre is going to be nice and slow. We're going to start on half power, and then we're going to slowly reduce the power all the way down to idle. Remember not to do this manoeuvre too close to the ground for the first time. So when you're ready to enter the prop hang, apply full up elevator and full power. You then want to burst the throttle 2 or 3 times to really push the plane into a vertical position. When you start bursting the throttle, you'll need to add in some rudder in order to correct for the plane trying to fall out. Keep bursting the throttle and applying rudder corrections until the plane's nice and vertical. From here you want to start adding on the right ailerons and apply little corrections on the elevator and the rudder. Remember to keep bursting the power. When the plane becomes more stable, you won't have to burst the power so much, and you can start to reduce the amount of power you're using in order to bring the plane lower to the ground. As soon as your plane becomes pretty stable, you're going to want to have a lot of right aileron on to stop the plane from torque rolling. Okay, so I started off the prop hang okay, but at this particular point the wind has caught the yak and pushed it down the field. Now as you can see, I've forgotten to put on the right aileron, which means that now the plane is going to go into a torque roll, and I have to now correct for this torque roll and make sure that the plane doesn't crash. So you need to know how to be able to do a torque roll even when you're learning to prop hang. So to learn how to do the torque roll, please see my torque roll tutorial.